And I'm here with Greg, the Hydrogen Man from the YouTube channel Health Uprising 144K. Greg, welcome to the Optimal Performance Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Sean. It's good talking to you.
Let's start with the basics because hydrogen products have become more popular, in my opinion, in the health optimization longevity scene for, I would say, more like the last 5 years. And I've done podcast episodes in the past on the topic, which is why I'm excited to talk today. What is hydrogen?
Well, hydrogen, the simplest way to explain it, in my opinion, is it's just a gas. So if you really want to understand hydrogen, just understanding oxygen is very similar because oxygen's a gas, hydrogen is a gas. There's a lot of different types of gases. They all have different effects on us. And we are talking specifically about something called molecular hydrogen. There are other types of hydrogen, by the way. And obviously molecular hydrogen is where all the medical data is really, established and a lot of scientific study, and is obviously medically approved in Japan, though not in a lot of other countries, obviously. And in America, I mean, talk to the average doctor, they don't even know about it. But, they don't teach it in medical school, even though we have a ton of scientific data and medically approved, obviously, in Japan. So that's what the kind of hydrogen we're talking about and the type of gas we're talking about.
Okay. And the type, so we're talking about hydrogen gas, but specifically as it pertains to our topic today, it's not just gas as an application. We're talking about gas and water as the fundamental sort of consumable context for hydrogen gas, correct?
Well, yeah, but what you're really doing is when you're doing quote unquote hydrogen water, what you're actually doing is using the water as a carrier for the gas. So you're actually dissolving the gas into water. For the average person to understand this is think of like soda pop or carbonated water. They have dissolved CO2 into that water. So you can dissolve gases. I mean, you can actually even do ozone. You can dissolve ozone gas into water. So we're doing molecular hydrogen, dissolving it into water.
Gotcha. Perfect. Your story, anybody that does just a little bit of digging on your story, it is super inspiring. And so maybe if you could start out by telling us your health journey, because it really does set the stage for your advocacy and participation in this space. Like give people a little bit of idea of your triumph and continuation of health optimization.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I was just extremely sick. Things did start when I was young, but I kind of, you're young and you can kind of push on through, and things weren't as severe, and they continued to get more severe. And I mean, I had my health trouble got so bad that technically I shouldn't even be alive right now. I had major issues. I had a major heart condition. I was told by my cardiologist that I was lucky if I were to have 10 years to live. So that was the first one, and they want to do, open heart surgery most likely. I had inflammation all over my body that was so extreme that I literally, I mean, I still remember the day very clearly. Obviously, I was on a couch and I couldn't walk. And I went to go grab a remote control to try to change the channels on the, actually to turn on the television. And I couldn't even do it. My joints hurt so bad. I remember trying to prop up the remote and just trying to use gravity. And it was, and it broke me. I get pretty emotional if I bring back those memories too much because it absolutely destroyed me psychologically, and I was just destroyed physically. I mean, my liver was really not at its best. My kidneys were not at their best. Gut issues, inflammation, autoimmune issues. And then, on top of it all, I had some tumors in my body also, which some of them were quite painful on top of that. But just not being able to walk, not being able to walk was so heartbreaking. And my immune system was absolute garbage. I mean, I would get sick so easily, and it took me forever to recover. My recovery was absolutely horrible, whether it's from the minor injury or just being able to recover from the most common cold. And then I remember, like, once I would recover, which would take like a month and a half from a common cold, I would literally get sick within a week, all over again. And it was just, it was pure hell. My life was no fun during, those years, and very, very painful time in my life.
And how did you finally find molecular hydrogen as the thing?
Well, for a lot of people, obviously, who don't know my story, I mean, I worked in the medical field. I worked in the medical field for like 2 decades or more. And I know how it works. I worked with numerous doctors, specialists. I knew the system quite well. And then when I got sick, I was like, oh my God, like I didn't want to go through that gauntlet, and I was really concerned, but I didn't really feel like I had much of a choice. And then going through the system, they had no answers for me. It was really quite frustrating. And then I had to decide. I was never a health guru. I was never into health and biohacking and any of this stuff. I wasn't into that stuff. And then I just, I'm kind of a strange kind of guy. Like when I want to learn about something, I need to know everything. And it becomes a very deep dive that I become an expert in the field of whatever it is that I choose to pursue. And I'm pretty good at self education. In fact, I prefer self education rather than going to school. I did go to school, I hated it. I'm a very open minded free thinker, but I'm data driven. So I don't make stuff up or even take people's words for stuff. And I'm highly skeptical. And when I started researching and trying to understand health, first I would watch a lot of podcasts and stuff like that. Nobody was talking about hydrogen back then. But the frustrating part is that you'd have one podcast saying one thing and one podcast saying nothing. Some guy would be saying, hey, eating nothing but meat's the greatest thing in the world. Some other guy's like, no, you should only eat fruit. No, you should only do vegetables. No, you should only drink this type of water. No, the pH needs to be like this. Like everybody would disagree. And that was very frustrating. So at some point, I took it upon myself to just be like, look, I'm going to go with the data. I'm going to do critical thinking. I'm going to weigh out all my options. I'm going to start trying to create protocols and see what works. And so I had to learn about a lot of things. And that's when I stumbled upon molecular hydrogen. Now, when I read the first scientific data on molecular hydrogen, I thought it was a scam. I mean, immediately I was like, this can't be true. This is like way too good to be true. And usually, when things are too good to be true, usually they're not true. And I did continue reading the data, but I didn't use it for many years as my condition as I was deteriorating and as I was getting just so sick that eventually I was like, you know what? And the data kept popping up and I kept reading more and more new studies. I was like, I think I should probably try this. It was very frustrating for me though, because I didn't really understand hydrogen. Had I had somebody like myself, like, because I looked for YouTube channels, like nobody was talking about hydrogen. Nobody knew anything about hydrogen. Nobody knew the best way to make it, the proper protocols, nothing. People did not know. And so I had to do all this on my own. And after researching so much of this stuff, I realized that a lot of people could potentially, would want to know this information. And I was like, I should probably, make a YouTube channel and show the data and the information that I've obviously have learned. But yeah, it all started very skeptically. And then I'm like, where are you going to get hydrogen? I mean, I can't go to the corner drugstore and buy it. How am
Yeah.
I going to get? You've seen these studies where they have like this amazing, like, oh, look at these wonderful stem cells and they totally heal this guy's shoulder. Well, where do I get those stem cells? How do you make these? You know, where do I get my hands on this stuff? And so that became very frustrating. I'm like, where in the heck do I get my hands on hydrogen? And then and molecular hydrogen. And so it was a really long, frustrating journey. And yeah, that's how it all kind of started. I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, it mimics it's the classic. I was having a thing. I tried everything until I found the thing. And then I did the thing and I got better. And now I'm in love with it. I've made it my life's mission. I've made it my passion. I've heard it so many times. And those are the stories that I think are the ones that have the longest legs. Because when you are sick or a family member is sick and you are at wit's end, you're willing to try just about anything to try to get better. And then you get better. And I know this about your stories that it takes time, it takes consistency, it takes removing things from your life that are no longer serving you. But when that transformation happens, when you realize, oh my gosh, I'm feeling better, this is working, I'm all in. That's the best stuff. I love it. And so to hear you kind of say that that's kind of your origin story into this field, I think is really um in line. It makes sense to me. One
and,
thing that
and
and I go ahead.
well, I would say, the other thing that really, really came out to me in this whole process was working in the medical field. I saw the shenanigans that go on there. Getting into just natural health or biohacking and all this stuff, to be quite honest with you, my opinion on it is I found so much stuff that, in my opinion, I should say, look, I'm not giving any medical advice today. I'm not making any medical claims.
Right.
Everything they are the opinions of the speaker and should not be construed as any claims for or against any product or products. So I'm just going to put that out there. Beyond that, I just found so many shenanigans. I mean, there is so much garbage out there in the world of supplements and different machines that do different things, even water filters. I've seen some lab reports where the water comes out worse after going through a water filter rather than better, which is wild.
Right.
And so it really changed my view on a lot of things. And obviously I've created my own protocols and didn't really follow anybody really. It was all data driven. But you had a question. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, you're good. We're gonna bounce around quite a lot. One thing that I struggle with, and I myself am highly skeptical of Western medicine. You know, diagnose, prescribe, and or operate, or treat. And the one thing that you've said a couple of times, which I agree with and I appreciate, but I also kind of also have this little edge around, is the data. You know,
Yeah.
what is the data? Who created the data? Who did the studies? You know, in my opinion, there is no such thing as the science. The science is not a real thing. There is science, there is research and study, and there is data. And I think the last, 4 or 5 years has shown us that the science is just not, the science is never settled. So when you
Well,
say, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I will clarify and say that when I look at research studies, even when I first saw the first hydrogen ones, and I kept thinking it was a scam, eventually I'm like, who in the heck is doing these studies? Who in the heck is funding these studies? When it comes to hydrogen in Japan, just so you know, the government tried to shut down the hydrogen thing.
There we
It
go.
was out of control. The scientists who were like, no, this stuff is real. They were doing all this really on shoestring budgets sometimes, really trying to showcase what hydrogen can do to the point where even the government couldn't deny the positive outcomes from hydrogen. And eventually it had no choice but to medically approve it. You know,
Mm,
I'm always very skeptical. I understand your question and I totally agree with it, but there's certain things in science that are just true beyond a shadow of a doubt. Like, for example, like with water. I mean, we can talk about water because I'm a big water guy too. I know every water filtration modality in existence. I know all the different ways that water can be filtered. There are a lot of claims out there in regards to water, but the simple fact is that just about any water filter out there, they always want to claim things like, and I don't believe them, it'll eliminate all viruses, all bacteria, and all parasites. Okay, that's a really big one because there is almost, I would say there is none, but there is actually one method to eliminate all those things, and that is carbon distillation. You
right.
know, and we have, I have some lab tests here actually, third party lab tests, that really show what's in the water when they go through this process, what the issue is with the average filter. Because the other thing that they don't tell you when it comes to water filtration is typical person uses what's called a porous filter. If it's reverse osmosis, carbon filters, they're porous filters, which what people don't understand is if you have a brand new filter and you run the water through there and you test the water before and after, you're going to get one result. Now, let's just say that the company, whatever company you're using, they're like, hey, you can run 5,000 gallons through that filter or 10,000 gallons, whatever the number is, right? After you've run probably 500 gallons, maybe 1,000 gallons, not even close to halfway through the life of this filter, then test the water again.
Mm,
And you will that the tests are not going to come out the same. And that's because these porous filters, they get dirty and they actually build up bacteria and all sorts of stuff in them. And they're going to affect your water. With carbon distillation, so with these porous filters, the quality of your water, the more you filter it, the quality keeps going down. With carbon distillation, it's always the same. It's
mm.
all top-notch, super clean water. And I can give you numerous examples, but like probably one of the really good ones is, have you ever heard of a neti pot?
Oh, yeah.
And so the little neti pot, have you ever read the instructions on that?
No.
Okay, now this is what really like caution. This is the kind of word of caution to anybody out there when it comes to water and truly understanding water. You don't just put any water in a neti pot. Okay, you don't even use filtered water in a neti pot. You do not use even bottled water in a neti pot. The instructions specifically say to use distilled water. Why distilled water? Because it is the only water that is truly clean. and eliminates viruses, bacteria, and parasites, these types of pathogens. Even radioactive contaminants, which I was pretty shocked. I only learned about that because I saw the lab reports of what was coming through in our water. If you don't do that, there are literally people who have died from using the neti pot with water that is not of the highest purity,
Mm,
because it goes right through your sinuses. You get something in your brain, specifically some type of parasite or something, and it literally has killed people. And people don't understand the importance of water. And in my opinion, the importance of super clean water. I like the cleanest. I mean, I have a carbon distiller. It's not even expensive. I have an American made, high quality one. I mean, if people want to know what I use, the website's mypurewater.com. That's the name of the website. That's the stuff I use. If they want a discount code, I mean, you can use the code uprising144K. It does help support my channel a little bit, not much really. But the important part is just I love when people get clean water, because when you see what's in our water, I truly believe that it is literally affecting human beings in not a very positive way. Fogging you all up in the brain, messing with your immune system, messing with you hormonally. I could tell you the 3 pharmaceuticals that were found in everybody's water at high levels if you want. Things like women's contraception, things like antidepressants, and things like antibiotics. You don't think that stuff's going to affect your biology and your health? I
yeah.
mean, clean water is an absolute essential. And the reason that I became such a water connoisseur, water junkie, is because I had to use water to carry my hydrogen. Remember, so water is a carrier for one of the methods in which I use hydrogen. And I want the cleanest water because I wanted my health. And I didn't do what everybody else did. This is where we talk about the data. I didn't hyper focus on, oh, is it spring water? Is it a pH of, it's got to be this pH or whatever. The conclusion that I came with, this is me and my own personal critical thinking, is I just want the cleanest water. Is that
Yeah.
is that the right move? Because that's the
Yeah.
move I just want the cleanest water. I don't care what the pH is. I don't care which spring it came out of. I want super clean water. And the only thing that would provide that was carbon distillation. And so that's the method that I have gone with. And it has worked extremely good for me. But that's just clean water. The next step is hydrogen. And if people want to see like a live blood analysis, like what the stuff really does, on my channel, everything's free. I do everything for free on my channel. And if you go watch video number 68, you will see a live blood analysis of what normal water does, what really clean spring water does at quote unquote a healthy pH, and then the hydrogen water. When they specifically use the same equipment I used. The study was done in Japan. I use the #1 machine in all of Japan. It's really the #1 machine in the world. I mean, I use it for a reason, and so do doctors over there. And so that was the equipment that was used. And it was really funny because I've had doctors contact me, one specifically, who saw that video and said, what you're showing there is impossible. They're like, you're
Uh,
totally lying to everybody. And I said, look, I'm not lying to people. This is legitimate data. And this doctor was like, no, what you're showing there is just not possible. I don't know if you're understanding what I'm saying. And so after going back and forth, she said, look, I'll tell you what I'll do. If you're willing to do this, she says, I will buy the same equipment that was used in that study. I will take this to my own lab and do the exact same study. I want you to find all the parameters, everything that they did, all the details. And if the information that you're providing is incorrect, are you willing to do a video and retract what you showed and tell your audience, the truth? I said, absolutely. Because for me, I just want to find the truth. I mean, that's really
yeah.
all that matters. Be healthy, be happy, be good to others. It's that simple. And so I wanted good and accurate information on my channel. It's been important to me since I started it. So she did the whole process. And when she got back to me, she said, honestly, I can believe it. The results came back exactly the same. She said, I can't believe my eyes. And then she started giving the hydrogen water to her 90-something-year-old mother who was having all sorts of issues. And the results that her mother got were so unbelievable. Even her own mother, who never questions her daughter, because her daughter's a doctor, anything she brings her, she says she just takes it and never questions her. But she said that her mother, it was the first time that she said, honey, I would like to know, what is this stuff you're bringing me? Because it just looks like water, and this stuff is making all the difference. Her mother could barely get up and stand up for 1 or 2 minutes, and now she could walk around for 2 to 3 hours.
Mm.
So there's something to this. What is it? And then, of course, her mom said, it's hydrogen, mom. It's molecular hydrogen. And
Mhm.
so that's just one of the many crazy stories, because I've been doing this for like almost a decade or so. So it's just
That's that you I'm satisfied. Not like this is about me being satisfied, but the when governmental agencies are trying to shut you down and when doctors are shocked and calling BS on effects, that's when you know that something is meaningful. And this is apples and oranges comparison, but you know, protocols, treatments, detoxes, flushes, etc. that are villainized and called out and suppressed are the ones that work the best. You know, the thing that comes to mind is like the vitamin C flush using 100% organic ascorbic acid. You know, Linus Pauling's research and ascorbic acid and the litany of ailments and effects that it treats. You know, safe enough for pregnant women. Then it's like, okay, there's a reason why we don't know that you can take 24,000 milligrams of vitamin C in one afternoon and feel amazing afterward and, enhance your health in a very short period of time. And so I'm kind of making that connection is that, and if you don't have haters, then it's probably, you're probably not on the right path. Um,
I got a lot of those.
yeah,
Unfortunately.
yeah.
It,
Well, I want to get to that a little bit later and keep digging on that. So let's talk a little bit about again the experience and I'm not a doctor and this is not health advice. You shouldn't take what I'm saying as a suggested health protocol whatsoever. Just for information. What have you seen? Tell me a few more stories about some health recovery that people have experienced using molecular hydrogen. And I think it's probably time now to talk specifically about the Lord's Hydrofix, which is the one that you're using. What is it specifically? What does it do? And what have you seen it help people with?
So yeah, if you're talking about the Lourdes Hydrofix, just for if people want to see the machine and the official site, because as you can imagine, the most popular thing tries to be copied, and there are fake ones out there. So the official site is called holyhydrogen.com. If people want to see the equipment that I'm using, I specifically chose the equipment because of the scientific studies that I read and where it was leading to. And then I had to learn about a lot of things that I did not want to learn about, which was I had to learn a lot about the science and engineering. Because here's the funny thing about hydrogen: you can look at the studies and you can be like, look, hydrogen's amazing for you, right? Look at the studies. They're showing all these amazing effects on the heart and arthritis, and dementia or, whatever. So many medical conditions, diabetes, on and on it goes. I'll tell you some of the stuff that I've seen in a second. But what nobody talks about, just like maybe stem cells, okay, they're really great. And then you go to somebody who says, hey, I have hydrogen or I have stem cells or whatever. The thing that people don't seem to question is, how are you making it? How is there a way to make it better than others? And that's where things got really crazy. My research went from researching hydrogen for years to having to shift in how in the heck do I make it? Because it does make a difference how you make it. And then how do I apply it? So what's the protocol that I'm going to create? And part of it even is the super clean water that I mentioned. I mean, I could take tap water and dissolve hydrogen into it. I don't want to drink that. And so all this is just quote unquote part of the knowledge. Now, to answer your first question about what kind of conditions have I seen, just off the top of my head, dementia and Alzheimer's. I got a crazy video about it. I even have the pictures of the patient. It was a daughter who wrote to me because the results that were happening to her own mother, she contacted me. She said, is this normal? It's like, is this something that you normally see? Because this is a mind boggling what I'm seeing. I'm talking about a mother who doesn't even recognize her own daughter. And now she recognizes her daughter. She's talking to her. She's like, it's crazy. And thank goodness for the daughter that took the pictures, because you can see it on her face. That's the crazy part. You're going to see her face literally change as the time that she's been using the hydrogen. Things from like arthritis, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes. Those are some of the easier ones. Heart conditions, strokes. Most recently, somebody with, I believe it was Parkinson's, who hasn't been able to walk for a very long time. There's footage of them starting to walk, and which is totally crazy. I'm trying to get I saw a glimpse of it, but I want to get the full footage and release that on my channel. Um, the number one university in the world that researches hydrogen, which is Keio University in Japan, discovering that hydrogen appears to open up what's called ghost vessels in the body. I don't know if you know what those are, which is absolutely another super incredible thing. There's nothing else on the planet that I've ever heard that opens up ghost vessels. And on it goes, from glaucoma, macular degeneration, issues with the eyes that technically we're not supposed to be able to fix. I mean, dementia is something that we're technically not supposed to be able to fix. And then as far as athletics, I mean, there was a study done in Japan where they had all these soccer players and they tested them without hydrogen, their endurance, and then with hydrogen. In scientific study, anything that is effective over 80% of the time is deemed a huge success in the world of, medicine or science in regards to such things. In this particular study, 100%, every single one of them improved.
Hmm.
So that tells you something. I've seen things like people with, for example, oxygen saturation issues or lung issues. There was a guy that springs to mind. He smoked 3 pack of cigarettes a day, this poor guy, for 50 plus years. And he caused himself such major problems that he couldn't really have a healthy oxygenation saturation in his blood, of oxygen. And they just couldn't fix it. So they put him on oxygen, which, by the way, is a long-term oxygen usage is a bad idea. A lot of people don't understand the way oxygen works. We are breathing it in our atmosphere, but when you start supplementing it, your body's like, hey, we're getting a bunch of oxygen. I don't need to make that many red blood cells anymore, which is
Mm.
for people who don't understand how oxygen works, true pro athletes, people who really know what the heck they're doing because they have professional trainers, they actually do the opposite. They use equipment that limits their oxygen so that their body's like, oh, we're not getting enough. Let's produce more red blood cells. And then you supplement the oxygen, but only for periods of time. You do not want to do it regularly, in my opinion, right? No medical advice here, but this is the kind of data that I'm talking about when I say I'm data driven, to really understand how things work. Well, this guy started using the hydrogen because he is on oxygen 24/7. He can't be off of it even for 5 seconds. It's horrible. It's terrible life. He absolutely hates it. Couldn't have anything that works. He tried hydrogen pills and some of these little gimmicky products. Actually, like I brought this just to show, but like these little bottles, I don't use these. I'm not a fan. I can tell you why, but people, I get so many emails every day. Show me a good hydrogen bottle. I'm like, there isn't any. Okay, just
Mm.
stop asking because they're just, you need serious equipment if you want to make medical grade hydrogen. In my opinion, don't just use some little thing. And so this guy started using hydrogen. And then for the first time ever, his oxygen saturation started getting better. And now, up to date so far, he's been on the equipment for, I believe, somewhere like 4 or 5 months. And he can be off of oxygen for about 3 hours now, which is huge
Wow.
for him. And I believe that it'll only continue to get better. So on and on it goes. There's just been so many different things. I could give you some really interesting things. I mean, like my heart condition, for example, I had tried a lot of the cheaper products too, the pills and the bottles, and even different equipment like the Kangen machines and stuff, which, by the way, are, in my opinion, I can tell you this, what was discovered scientifically after long-term usage. See, Sean, this is the big problem with scientific study. There is a difference between short-term studies and long-term studies. And that is a very important thing because this is how, in my opinion, companies or whoever's trying to sell stuff or whatever, they want to show you things that look good, even in scientific studies. I don't want to pick on anything specific, but I'll bring it up a little bit. Like, and if I should use a different example, you let me know, okay? But like, for example, when people are like, okay, carnivore diet, like let's just eat nothing but meat. If you do a short-term study on that, it actually looks really good. Why? Because you're eliminating all the sugar and and whatnot, and that's really fantastic. Long-term research does not look very good. All right. I mean, I literally just had somebody very close to me die from being on the carnivore diet for like 2 years, and it caused him to have a heart attack. And it was just absolutely heartbreaking. This just recently happened, and it's just very sad.
Mm.
Um, so there, people don't seem to understand. Even people who've written books about it now, they're starting to backtrack and like, well, maybe you should add some vegetables, and it's like, yeah, duh, um, you know. But anyway, and the Japanese research is very different than the American research. I will tell you that. I look for truth, and for whatever reason, it always ends up leading me back to Japan. I'm not trying to find studies on purpose in Japan. They just do wonderful research and about food and the understanding of diet. They're masterful at understanding food and diet. I don't know if you know that, but they're
Yeah.
absolutely like sumo wrestlers. I mean, they do that on purpose and they know how to eat to get their bodies to do this and be that big and strong and pretty healthy, actually. And there's been research about the way their tissues work, even the way that they treat cows. Like they grow some of the best beef in the world. I mean, I've eaten it. It's unbelievable. The taste is like out of this world. They're just masters. The way they create their samurai swords, you may think that has nothing to do with nothing, but that's a science of metals. And I had to learn so much about metallurgy, the science of metals, when it came to hydrogen. And that was very frustrating for me because I didn't want to learn about the science of metals, but I wanted to understand hydrogen to the highest degree because I feel like I needed to do it in order to try to save my life. So I had to learn a lot of things that I just didn't really want to. But
Mm.
hopefully that answers the question. I don't know if that does or not.
Yeah, that's good. No, that's good. You're flowing. That's what I wanted. You mentioned the Kangen, which is I think it's probably pretty popular. I get questions about it, and in the realm of healthy water to drink. You hear about Kangen, you hear about structured water, you hear about alkaline water, and frankly, they make some pretty good cases. They'll either point to a study or they'll tell a story about, why, the balance of pH or versus acidity is really important. And, judging by what you've said so far and the smirk that you have, I'm curious about, your thoughts about pH water that has a high pH and or, these devices that make structured water.
All right, so let's talk about the Kangen thing because I'm going to go off some data that I found in Japan. If you looked at the short-term data, it looked really great. Everybody was absolutely blown away by the Kangen thing, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this machine that creates alkaline water, the benefits are out of this world," and people were very impressed. And I remember that, and it was true. The data was showing that, but the long-term data looked detrimental, and it started having issues on people, specifically their GI systems. Why? People couldn't understand why until the science came out about hydrogen and molecular hydrogen, obviously, specifically. And ultimately, this is what was happening. First of all, the Kangen machine, in my opinion, is completely the wrong way to make hydrogen. Okay, completely the wrong way, but I'll explain why. First of all, remember this about hydrogen. Hydrogen is pH neutral, all right? Hydrogen is odorless, colorless, and tasteless, but specifically pH neutral. Now, if you're manipulating pH with the ionization of water like a Kangen machine does, then you're already making it wrong. It just shows you that you're already making it wrong. And the problem is when you say alkaline water, the truth is that that's too vague of a statement. I can make alkaline water by putting baking soda in water. Voila. Is that going to solve all my problems? No. I tried it. It didn't solve my problems, but I had major medical issues. And so you can make alkaline water many different ways. You can even have certain minerals that are going to affect, obviously, the pH of the water. When you're doing it with the Kangen, I don't like the filters they use either because you have to hook it up to your sink, which means I have to use the water that they want to provide me through their filters. Not good enough for my standard. I want the cleanest water known to man that I could run through my sinuses safely if I chose to do so. And so the Kangen machine, that was one of the issues. Now, what happens is it appears, I'm not making any claims or anything, but I read this study in Japan that because it's affecting the pH of the water, now your stomach is actually designed to be acidic. You actually want your stomach to be acidic. Why? Because the function of your stomach acids is to kill certain pathogens that come into your stomach, to break down the food so that it can not only get properly digested, so that you can actually absorb the nutrients from your food. Stomach acids are super important. Now let's go look at the data. Now this scientific data is like clear as day. Anybody can go verify it. As you age, your stomach acid production is actually going down. Okay, that's just something that happens with age. The science has clearly shown that. And that's probably why you can see some young guy who's in his 20s eating some enormous steak and no problem, I can eat this thing. You go try to give that to a 90-year-old guy, and people who are older really want foods that are easier to digest, and so your stomach acids are important. So what they found with the whole Kangen thing or these alkaline waters or whatever is during prolonged usage, it was affecting the stomach acids. So this is why it appeared to be affecting.
Mm.
That's where the problem really happened, in my opinion, right? And again, then they were like, well, why was it so beneficial at the beginning? It turns out that the Kangen machines were inadvertently, literally by accident, making some hydrogen. It was never the pH. It was the hydrogen that these machines were making. And the machines only made hydrogen for a certain amount of time because eventually the metals and whatnot, they would get calcium. Things would happen to the machine basically that was inhibiting hydrogen production. And so after so much time, you weren't even getting any hydrogen anymore. And that's why some people would use them and say, oh, I'm getting great benefits. And then later on, you talk to those people and they weren't. And then sometimes they would want to perpetuate the lie or even lie to themselves because it was a money thing. It was a pyramid scheme. And everybody's like, well, no, it's really great. I really believe in it. But then I've talked to many people, even people, there was this woman, actually, this is a really interesting story. This poor girl had some pretty big medical issues. She was a Kangen rep. And I met her through some friends or whatever one time. And she kept pushing the Kangen thing. She clearly had these problems. And then once you sit down with someone and you're all hanging out, and then the truth finally comes out, and she finally admits that she's got these problems and her Kangen has not solved them. She quit using the Kangen. She started actually doing the hydrogen protocol that I created. And I'm not kidding you, all her issues went away. And it was
Wow.
like really, really impressive. And all the people who were there who knew her witnessed it too. It took time, but they all knew her. We all knew each other. So, there's just so much that happens, and how much, I hate to say this, but how much money influences everything out there in regards to health, whether it's westernized medicine or even quote unquote biohacking and all this stuff. I think the corruption is everywhere. And that's really sad. And you have to really sift through it to find out what's real, because there is stuff out there that's real. And in my opinion, the majority of it isn't. So there are certain things that are real, but you have to be very cautious on even supplements that you're taking. I've seen lab tests. Like, I used to use this powder for nutrients. I'm really, really big on overcoming nutritional deficiencies. It's one of the parts of my protocol. Why? Because scientific data, again, shows us that nutritional deficiencies, lead to disease. You were talking about vitamin C earlier. So if you have a deficiency in vitamin C, it actually leads to scurvy. I don't know if you're probably aware of that, right? And do you know what the cure for scurvy is? And I should never say the word cure. You know how scurvy would go away? You just fix your vitamin C levels. There
Yeah.
you go. Away. Voila. And so for me to overcome any ailment that I may have that is unknown by the medical establishment or whoever, one of the parts of my protocol, because I try to clear all the things that I would need in order to be at my best health. And one of them is nutritional deficiencies. Obviously, one of them is hydration. One of them is actually really lowering the amount of parasites and worms and different things in my body. I mean, I have a whole protocol that I created for myself, and it worked, and it blew my mind. I can't believe that little old me. I mean, I don't claim to be the smartest person in the world or anything. And how did I figure it out? And billions of dollars in the medical establishment, they can't figure stuff out. I mean, I've worked with people with quote unquote, cancer. I don't even like to go into that one too much, because of how dangerous this world is, where they don't let us talk about quote unquote the truth. And I do get attacked, and it just gets exhausting.
Yeah.
But pointing, but
Yeah.
there is real.
Does what do you think molecular hydrogen water consumption, what does it actually do inside the body?
So I will not say what I'll tell you as far as the scientific aspect. I mean, the truth is nobody knows at this point its full mechanism, like exactly how it's working. Nobody actually knows for sure, and that's the truth for most pharmaceuticals. Also, by the way, a lot of people don't know the full thing of exactly how they work. They know that hydrogen appears to function as an antioxidant. It appears to act like an anti-inflammatory. It appears to have certain things in regards to cell signaling, all this type of stuff. Working on free radicals, like like ROS, reactive oxygen species, certain oxidative stress. Me personally, I actually think I know the real big piece of the puzzle of what exactly it's doing. Nobody in the world knows. There is no scientist. There's nobody. The only reason I've kept it to myself to this point is just because every single time I release something on the internet, my stuff gets stolen. And so, like, for example, I never put my hydrogen protocol out there because I would tell people and I would share it with people, but I didn't put it online because I just had a really strong gut feeling somebody's going to take it, and other people take credit for it, which it's not an ego thing for me, but I want people to know who's bringing this information, who really knew or understood and brought this information forward, not who's taking credit for it, right?
Mhm.
And but eventually, I just felt like people really needed to know, so I put my protocol out there. And I'm not kidding you. Within 2.5 months, the very first study was done on exactly my protocol. I mean, I know my protocol when I see it. They clearly took my protocol, and then they did another study, and it did prove that my protocol works better than any method of using hydrogen to date. And I have more ideas that I still haven't released. And so I actually want to build a device. There's a device that I would like to build that I think will revolutionize the world of medicine. I personally believe that there's a very strong probability. I've already run it by a doctor and scientist, and because I wanted to see if I was really thinking along the right track. This guy's pretty brilliant. And basically, this device, in my opinion, could probably get rid of just about any disease known to man. I know it's a pretty big claim, and I'm not making claims, but I'm just saying that that's what I believe this device would do. I also think this device actually has the huge potential for reversing our aging. And I know that's another big thing that I'm saying here. And I'm talking about taking an 80-year-old man and making him 20 years old again. So this is big stuff. I know. I know that it's big stuff.
Whoa.
And I actually have proof. And I only showed this proof to one, a lawyer that I know and trust. he had this particular scientist and doctor sign an NDA because he really wanted me to talk to him. He's a guy from UCLA, and he really wanted he wanted to know if what I was saying was legitimate. And the lawyer felt that he didn't understand the concept well enough, and that this doctor scientist would. And the first 5 minutes, the guy thought I was nuts. And then after we got to about 10, 15 minutes into the conversation, we ended up talking for hours. And by the end of it, he said, you know what, this might actually work. He goes, this is
Wow.
crazy. We would need millions of dollars to make it happen. And actually, I think it could do even more than that. I have all sorts of crazy ideas, even to grow food that the world literally has not seen for many, many, many thousands of years. So nobody even knows that it exists. But I believe we can grow food that is so crazy nutritional that our food would know without a shadow of a doubt would end up being like true medicine. And so there's all sorts of things that I would like to do in the world of hydrogen. And nobody really knows about these things. So I can only give so much information at this time, but hopefully I'll connect with someone like an Elon Musk, for example. I need engineers and I need funding to really develop this device, which I believe will change. It's absolutely needed. I think it's needed, this particular piece of equipment I want to create to even be able to go to Mars like Elon wants to go. A lot of people don't understand that when you go to outer space, you're actually exposed to large amounts of radiation. And in just 24 hours of being out there, you'll get the same amount of radiation as you will on planet Earth, being out in the sun. It's 6 months. So 6 months outside is equal to 24 hours, just one day out there. So you really get bombarded, and you have to have a way to protect the body because radiation will just age you extremely fast. And so I just think this technology is going to absolutely be needed. And there's more, I have more than even just that. So we're just scraping the tip of the iceberg. I've come up with, and I can't take credit for it. I could tell you how it all happened, but it just gets a little woo woo. But yeah, whatever direction you want to go.
Well, I don't ever shy away from the woo woo. I live in the woo woo. The what in my experience, the most effective longevity or biohacking or health optimization devices, protocols, techniques mimic nature, right? So grounding, bare feet on the ground, healthy circadian rhythms, clean air, just the right amount of sun exposure, um, food that's not laced with, or water that's not laced with opiates or glyphosate, et cetera, et cetera. And those types of protocols, devices, and products that mimic nature are the things that see the biggest benefit. And it's sort of this like fine line between archaic knowledge that we've forgotten and cutting edge science that like mimics that. Do you, in your opinion, does molecular hydrogen check that box? And is what you're working on and developing now capture that same idea?
Simple answer, absolutely. So this is the thing. It's funny that you mentioned this because when I was trying to create my protocols, yes, I look at scientific data. I told you I'm data driven. But when I say data driven, it also means, I look for many places for the knowledge that I have gathered and created the protocols. So I looked at actually ancient scriptures, I look at scientific study, and I looked at nature. So when you brought up nature, in fact, that was one of my questions to myself. I asked a lot of questions to myself. I'm like, hey, how does nature clean water? I mean, nature is absolutely amazing. How in the heck does it clean water? Well, it actually starts with hydrogen because it starts with the sun. The sun is made up of pretty much almost entirely hydrogen. Some people might argue and say, well, it's also made of helium. What do you think helium is? Okay, it's hydrogen. So the sun is made of hydrogen. Okay, the sun hits the water, hits like the ocean, and steam begins to rise. Okay, this is actually how the planet purifies its water. The steam rising, hence one of the names of my channel, Uprising, right? Uprising 144K. I don't know, might get into that one, but that's a whole other conversation. So the steam rises, and then it'll come down in pretty much two ways: rain or snow. What people don't realize is that rain and snow is distilled water, okay? And then if you look at the ancient scriptures, there you'll find verses like pure as the driven snow, pure as white as snow. What's the name of the website for the carbon distiller I use? mypurewater.com. This product that I like to use for my nutrients is from Purium. Everything I do is about purity. Now, again, if people want to try this, I mean, my discount code is Uprising144K. I'm trying to get as much funding as I can so I can get some of this stuff, going. So if anybody wants to support the channel and use what I'm using, but anyway, so the point is that it's all about purity for me. And that's how nature does it. It's a process of distillation. That's what led me to start looking at all the different ways of filtering water, including the process of distillation and how it tries to mimic nature. So that's one way that I discovered the water. And I've done experiments too, where we have like, for example, these boxes with a bunch of exact same soil, exact same seeds. And we would use like rainwater in one, tap water in one, different types of water, for example. And you see the difference. Clearly the water or the plants, they like distilled water a lot. And then when you put hydrogen in it,
Hmm.
next level. All right, it just causes super crazy growth. In fact, I got another testimonial just a week ago that I still haven't posted on my channel yet. People showing me pictures of different plants and flowers and things that they've worked on and trying different types of water, and the hydrogen hands down is the best. um, and so then as far as this device that I want to, I can't go too much into detail about it, but I'll just say, oh, well, let's talk about hydrogen for a second, actually. So have you ever heard of a place called Lourdes, France, or Lourdes, France?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Don't know much about it.
So this is actually where the hydrogen thing really came from. We're talking about a natural spring from nature that people were drinking the water, and everybody's like, oh, it's holy water, whatever, right? And so all these people are supposedly miraculously having their medical conditions go away. So much so where they started to have to track these people and proving without a shadow of a doubt that this stuff is working, and they don't know why it's working. So then they started sending scientists to study that water. All the scientists would take the water, send it to a lab or whatever, and they would say, you know what, there's nothing special about it. It's just H2O. There's nothing magical here. There's nothing to see here, guys, until the Japanese. And I just love the Japanese because they're so into the details. They were the ones who discovered that that water actually has high levels of molecular hydrogen. So it does
Oh,
from nature. And then they started mimicking it by putting in a lab. This is actually how they found out that the Kangen was making the hydrogen inadvertently. Everybody kept thinking it was the pH. And now what does the Kangen company say? Oh, we have a hydrogen machine here. And it's like, nah, not really. It's not really a true hydrogen machine. It just kind of happens to make some. But that's how they're now advertising it. And a lot of companies are doing that now. All of a sudden their devices make hydrogen. And so everybody wants to jump on that bandwagon. But it just really isn't true. In fact, the machine that I use is the only machine in the world. Every single one of the machines get lab tested and certified to make sure that they're making therapeutic amounts of hydrogen, and so much more, by the way. The way that it makes hydrogen and does both the water and the gas, best nanobubbles in the industry. They keep perfecting the machine. Now they made a technology. I got a glimpse of the footage of this. This was wild, Sean. They've done something with hydrogen that nobody even thought was possible. Like, it's not even supposed to be possible. It's almost, dare I say, almost breaking the laws of physics. So it's just absolutely wild what they're doing, and they're calling it sticky hydrogen.
hmm.
They have so everybody's testing hydrogen incorrectly. By the way, everybody uses like these little silly blue drops. Have you seen those?
Yeah.
I don't want to put anybody down, but anybody who truly recommends that doesn't know what they're talking about when it comes to the world of hydrogen. I hate to say that, so I'm not giving out any names. I've seen the proper equipment to measure hydrogen in water, and it is not little blue drops. Okay, this equipment's very expensive. It's actually more expensive than the devices themselves. It has to be constantly calibrated because it's just such a pain in the rear to work this machine. It is a Japanese machine. Obviously, the Japanese is like the mecca of hydrogen. And I've seen that equipment at work when they measure hydrogen. And when I recently saw the footage of the new hydrogen that this company is making, you should have seen what it was doing to the machine. I'm going to actually release the footage once I can get the full footage, but it is bonkers. And these guys are so obsessed and passionate about hydrogen, which I love, right? Because we can actually buy the equipment, and it's actually affordable. Because to make super high quality hydrogen back in the day, I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, needing a lab, because people don't understand the difference between medical grade hydrogen and non-medical grade. And this is important. We should actually touch on this, Sean. Let's say you go to a hospital. Do they have oxygen tanks there?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, right? Now that's medical grade oxygen. All right. Then you go to like some place that does welding or something, and they have oxygen tanks too. Now that's not medical grade oxygen. Do you know what the difference is? I mean, they're both oxygen.
Density. Uh, what?
Purity.
Hmm.
That's all it is purity. So when you have oxygen at the hospital, it's the highest purity. I mean, we're talking about gas you're going to inhale. I mean, you want high purity. I mean, it's absolutely insane that we wouldn't do that. You go to a welding place, it's not that important that it's super, super pure or whatever. It's for welding. And so nobody really wants to hear this, especially companies trying to sell hydrogen stuff. They don't want anybody talking about, like, like the pills that you were telling me you used. Haven't you ever seen how they put off like a gas?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think you'd want to inhale that?
I wondered about that.
Yeah, I would too.
I wondered about that as I put it in the bath with me to recover from injury and thought, it's effervescing. Okay, so it's bubbling up. That's cool. That's what it should be doing. It's changing the color to a gray. That's interesting, and I don't know what to think about that.
Think
But
about it.
there,
It's supposed to be colorless and odorless
right.
and tasteless and pH neutral. The hydrogen pill doesn't follow any of those.
Mm. So
It's
what
not.
was that? What was that gas that was coming off it?
I don't. I wouldn't know exactly what the gas is. All I know is that it's not anything I would want to inhale. I mean,
Yeah,
it actually smells kind of nasty. Even I've
metallic.
Yep, and it tastes like metal, which I'm not going to tell you what might be in those pills, but I'm just saying if it tastes like metal and it looks like metal, right? It's gray. I don't know if people like metals, then whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying that's not. I don't use that, and I don't know any medical professional in Japan that is a true hydrogen specialist. There are a lot of people who claim to be. I haven't seen one that recommends those pills, so or even
So
uses them.
let me dig into that a little bit because they are, well, I don't know how popular they are, but are all are all hydrogen tablets for used for consumption or bathing bollocks? Are they all bad for you? Not good? All of them.
In my opinion, right?
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
I would never use them. And there is a new tablet that is trying to be developed or semi-developed in Japan where they make them differently. The problem is what people also don't understand about the whole hydrogen pills and this type of stuff. And they're popular because they're cheap, right? Everybody just wants everything for cheap, especially in a pill. Hydrogen just doesn't work that way. You need to do things right. Just like water filters, you're not going to buy a little $50 filter and it's going to make your water the cleanest water possible. It's just not going to happen. And so I wouldn't use the pills. This newer type of pill that they've actually developed, the hydrogen amount that it puts out is actually even lower than the ones that you're talking about, which, by the way, in my opinion, really don't give you the proper levels. And I'll explain that in a second. But those other pills that they're developing are even more expensive. In fact, they're really expensive. It just doesn't make any sense to me to even use them. But the fundamental problem is that people always want to talk about ppm, right? So like, oh, they make 9 ppm or 5 ppm, whatever. That's a really big misunderstanding because parts per million or ppm is actually in relationship to the amount of water.
Right.
Okay. And you actually want, and when they measure it, they put a tiny little bit of water, right? In my opinion, you're not going to get medical doses. You'd have to take multiple of these pills. But even the bottle itself, and I believe this is all for legal purposes, right? Only take one pill. Oh, I wonder why. I
Yeah.
mean, what more of them? Is there something in there that might be harmful to me at a higher dose? I don't
Right.
know. Claims, but that's how they protect themselves, in my opinion, and they don't want anybody to know. This is why they hate me. Sorry. I mean, I don't want to. I'm not trying to put people down or a product down. I just want the truth. And when it
Yeah.
comes to and you're really looking for real results, and there's people whose lives are on the line. My life was on the line. And trying things that you're just wasting time or losing time, and it's not really maybe being that effective or maybe even potentially harmful or whatever. This is why it bothers me, because I actually do care about people. And then I want to see the best for people, and it's not just about selling some products. And so anyway, but what
Yeah.
you really look at is actually the amount of milligrams of hydrogen, not the ppm. You want to know how many milligrams. So in 1 liter, 1 ppm equals roughly 1 milligram of hydrogen. I discovered that you want roughly 2.5 milligrams of hydrogen daily for it to be really truly therapeutic. You'd have to be popping a lot of pills, my friend. And then on top of it, people don't understand that when you're dissolving hydrogen into water, I mean, you can only dissolve so much of it in our atmospheric pressure. Okay, so if it's measuring higher than 1.6, let's say ppm, then is it really having that much in the water, or is it because it's being produced but constantly escaping? I mean, when you make hydrogen that way, you think you're seeing a big number, but it's that you're just measuring what's continuing to be produced. But when you make hydrogen that way, it escapes really fast.
Hmm.
The way that I make it, it's much more stable, and you want it to be stable and, in my opinion, bioavailable. So that's another thing. Without byproduct, I mean, the
Right.
hydrogen not gray. It doesn't stink. I mean, I could inhale it right now. Heck, I have it right here. In fact, I don't know. I'll just inhale some while we're hanging out. Might as well.
Yeah, might as well.
I mean, it's super good for me. But the thing is that the one that I make is there's no gray color, there's no metallic taste. It truly is pH neutral. I mean, looking at all the scientific data is what led me to this machine. That's how I found it. It's an amazing story too. The guy who developed it. I mean, most of the machines that you find, like these type of things and stuff too, they're made in China. And no offense to the Chinese, but they don't have the strongest of metal technology. The science of metallurgy is very important when it comes to hydrogen. I would never want to use anything that uses like stainless steel. I've seen machines that use lye, sodium hydroxide. I would never do that. That's literally the main ingredient in Drano. They are
Yeah.
now dissolved bodies, which is really kind of sad. Like when people pass away, I learned about that because recently that guy who passed away from the carnivore diet, I didn't know that they're using this stuff to dissolve human bodies now because of they're trying to make less CO2 by so they don't cremate the bodies. I mean, but this stuff is horrible for the environment. You don't want to be dumping it into our waterways, which is what ends up happening. So anyway, it all gets really wild. But like I said, it led me to this device. And when I found out why this device was created, because it checked all the boxes. You're talking about checking boxes. I'm like, this thing checks all the boxes. What is it with this machine? Who is this? Who is this? What is this company? And who developed this thing? And I found out that the guy who was really in charge of it all, his daughter was born with ALS. It's such a sad story. She was born with Lou Gehrig's disease. They told him that she'd be lucky to make it to the age of 5 years old. I mean, just a very sad story. And he knew about hydrogen and he really thought it would help her a great deal. And she was having a lot of lung issues and infections and stuff like that, which, by the way, I've seen hydrogen do amazing things when it comes to infections. I
Mm.
got meals on that. And regulating blood glucose, which a lot of people also don't understand. Drinking 1 can of soda increases your risk of viral and bacterial infections for 6 hours and suppresses your immune system too for roughly that amount of hours. So sugar wreaks havoc on us. That's why people with diabetes don't live as long and all sorts of health problems. So anyway, he wanted to develop the best device, and of course, advisors and when it comes to money, they're like, hey, we should have this thing made in China. And he's like, no, I am not going to have it made in China. Everything is going to be the best. This is for my daughter. I want to make the best hydrogen machine in the world for home use. That's my goal. And so, and learning about the little things that he was doing was like blowing my mind. Even the metal he wanted to use, there was no technology or science that could develop what he was asking for. There's a really amazing metal company in Japan, which they're like the #1 in the world that works with the kind of metals that he was wanting to develop for the machine. And he tried lots of different metals, including gold. And he was just trying to find the best in the world. And everything was done in Japan. Everything was done, like they even had big companies help them. People like Yamaha, Toyota, G-Shock, like big companies that had no financial incentive. In Japan, see, this is the beautiful thing about Japan. They actually work together. They're not like arguing about religion or politics. I mean, they really do. We're Japanese, and the only way to move forward is together. And that's what I love about their culture. And so they help each other, and these industries help them. And eventually, they did make a breakthrough on the metal technology. And their metal that they use is unlike any metal of any hydrogen device in the world.
Mm.
And they just recently improved it too, and it's amazing. And then on top of it, they also developed the membrane. So when I saw like these things have a membrane in them, they call them SPE, membranes. I saw lab reports of what's in them, and oof, when I saw that, I was like, okay, I'm never drinking out of anything like this again.
Was it plastics and stuff like that?
I don't want to. I got to be careful about what I say. All I'll say is that maybe when I have the lab reports to show you, all I'll say is that what's in it, yeah, I just wouldn't drink it.
Yeah.
And let's just say that you're pretty close on what you're talking about there. But
Yeah.
there's just no from again scientific data that these things could potentially be like really bad for us. So I didn't want anything to do with that. On top of it, plated metals. So they're using plated metals. Why does China use plated metals? Because it's cheap, low-end technology. They don't understand. They don't have the science. They don't have the science of metals. And so I don't know if you know what happens to plated metals when you run electrical current and have them in water.
Yeah. They off gas, they deteriorate
And go in where?
into the blood, into the gut, into the brain.
Well, I mean, they potentially go into the water that you're going to be potentially
Yeah.
consuming.
Right.
So, you want the hydrogen to be really clean, whether it's the hydrogen water, the hydrogen gas. To me, it's all about purity. That's the important part first, just like oxygen tanks, medical grade. and then the proper levels. So it's about purity and proper levels, and then it's part of protocols. How do I consume this? How do I go about my day and implement this into my life? And the awesome part is that it's totally accessible. We're not talking about a device that costs $30,000 or $100,000. I mean, it's actually affordable, and it's important that it makes both the water and the gas. Because my protocol, the one I created, was the combination, and the combination is what appears to work the best. And that's those two studies that where they copied my protocol. Um, that's how they started doing it. Because no test, can you believe that no test ever had done that before? um, so on it goes, Sean. But there's so much here, and what do you do?
Okay, let's go deeper down the rabbit hole then. And I'm gonna have to use coded language here, but just because I've been kicked off or my episodes have been pulled from YouTube. So
Right?
hopefully there's a way we can carefully talk about this.
Absolutely,
Um, So you've talked about, when I said, "Hey, what is it actually doing?" You said, "Well, we don't really know, but we think that it's, antibacterial, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, gets rid of free radicals." Well, a certain instance in the world in the last 4 years led a lot of us to do some medical interventions that are proving to be bad news. And you know exactly what I'm talking about already.
I do.
There are, and this is close to home for me, and this is, I myself refrained, period. Um,
Me too, by the way. I look, I understand scientific technology and medical technology, and when new stuff comes out, I'm never the first one to dive in, my friend. I always need to wait and see. Just like a new car that comes out, you don't know how good that car is going to be or how reliable or whatever. And so I'm always taking a step back, and I did the same thing. Any medical intervention, I'm always going to want to see what happens in the long term. Hence, even
yeah,
the high, the short term studies of the king and stuff, and then long term what happened.
right.
So
So you and I are in this control group, right?
yeah.
So for others who are experiencing some health effects, some of which are absolutely obviously related directly back to this treatment that they got for this thing.
No, I know you're saying I'm just messing around with
Everybody,
you.
everybody gets it, right? Everybody, we're all get it. My listeners understand.
Yeah.
And again, this is not medical advice. I don't think that we've said anything that's going to get us in trouble. Do you think that this could help rid the body? We know about nattokinase, we know about CoQ10 and detox protocols for this thing. Do you is there any reason to believe that the molecular hydrogen would also help in treating people or help not treating but helping people move through the negative and deleterious effects of this experimental treatment that so many of us all around the world got one or two or three or five of?
Well, in my opinion, I'll just say yes, and I've already seen it. And by the way, I knew about nattokinase. In fact, I was saying it before anybody even knew about it, even the top doctors, because again, data, and it was actually from Japan a long time ago. It was old data that I had seen on how. That's why I actually put not just see nattokinase is just an enzyme. I actually use the raw food form. The body, from a lot of research that I look at,
Natto?
I use natto. Yep. And natto has almost as much protein as beef. It has that wonderful enzyme in it, but it also has so many other properties to it. I created what I call the natto smoothie because a lot of people can't stomach the flavor of it. But there's so many things. The Japanese have done so many studies on natto. It's ridiculous. I'm telling you, they're big on food and the science of food. And it oxygenates cancer cells, and cancer cells have a hard time, by the way, with oxygen, obviously. And it is such an amazing food. They even say that it might literally be the number one superfood in all of Japan. And that's a big claim because they have a lot of amazing superfoods in Japan. And natto is like number one. I eat it almost every single day. So amazing. What I've done is actually I created a protocol with a combination of hydrogen and natto. And the reason is because, first of all, you have to understand, and we talked about this, hydrogen appears to open up the ghost vessels. Let's talk about what ghost vessels are. This is kind of important. So when you see a little baby, cute little baby, and they're all like plump, really plump, and obviously well hydrated, and typically warm, and they have really good blood circulation and all this stuff. As you age, there's places in your body that gets blood that you literally stop getting blood into there. So you literally have like these blood vessels that get no blood supply, and it's like a ghost town. They call them ghost vessels. Okay. Hydrogen begins to get blood back. Now, why is this such a big deal? I don't think people understand how important blood is. Here's another way that I created my protocols. There's an ancient scriptural verse that says, life is in the blood. Okay, now what does this mean? If I put a rubber band around my arm or around my forearm, whatever, and I stop getting blood supply to my hand, what's going to happen to my hand?
It's gonna turn white. It'll
It's going
just
to
fall off.
start going purple and it's going to die, right? I mean, that's ultimately it's the blood that's bringing this life. Well, what is it in blood that's really bringing the life? Well, we have gases in our blood. That's why you test oxygen saturation. We also have hydrogen in our blood. Our bodies do produce hydrogen, by the way. And I do other protocols that support making more hydrogen in my body on its own, on top of the supplementation that I do. And so the thing about natto is natto has this property to it where it actually causes your blood to just get a little thinner, which is like almost like a natural statin. I'm not into statins, but if my food's doing it, nothing wrong with it in my opinion, right? And so what I've done is, and then when you see the video number 68, the live blood analysis done on hydrogen, it literally shows how hydrogen moves your blood in such a crazy way, like really improving blood flow and blood circulation. In fact, the Japanese also discovered that almost every single person who has cancer, their core body temperature is lower than it should be. So they found a correlation between body temperature and disease in regards to cancer and actually a lot of other medical conditions. When you use hydrogen, core body temperature start going up. And I think a lot of it has to do with this blood flow. And this is why when you see little babies, I've seen little kids and toddlers running around nothing but a diaper, and it's cold and they're fine. Then you see an elderly person, they're like, I'm so cold, and it's like, it's 100 degrees, you know, they want a blanket or something, you know? And so it really affects body temperature. And so what I did is I create this protocol where I use the hydrogen. So not only am I opening these ghost vessels, I'm moving the blood like crazy. I'm bringing the life molecule. I'll explain why I believe that hydrogen is the life molecule, which is one of the reasons that it brings so much healing to the body, in my opinion. You bring that into your blood with all the nutrients. Remember, I'm big on overcoming nutritional deficiencies. And then I put natto in there too, which is going to be making the blood be a little more viscosity, you know, a little thinner so it moves around even better, like lubricant. And
Mm.
these ghost vessels, bringing nutrients to places that haven't had nutrients, bringing more hydration, bringing down the free radical damage, you know, all this type of stuff. So this is how my brain works. You know, the things that I come up with only make sense. I mean, they're really just pretty logical, actually. You just have to understand easy and affordable ways to apply it into your life, which is really something that I really feel that I've worked very hard at. And I have found ways to do it in a very affordable manner. I've clearly done it for myself and many other people. The crazy results, like especially for people with gut issues, like with celiac disease, Crohn's disease. I got a crazy testimonial from this poor girl who had issues since she was little. No doctor could ever fix them. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they wanted to do surgery. Nothing could fix it. I literally did my special hydrogen natto smoothies, hydrogen water, and gas inhalation with super clean water. I mean, that was it. And I, you know, getting her nutrients solved all her problems. She couldn't believe it. She's like, I've lived like this all my life. And I've had so many people like that. And so it's just really important to give the body what it truly wants. And like you said, eliminate the chemicals. Like these things are bogging us down every single day. Every day you eat it or drink it or breathe it, it's affecting you every day. There's a reason you can't get out of this mess that you're in when it comes to our health. But I don't know if that really answers your question or not.
Yeah, you said that you were aware of an example of someone who had some negative effects from some of the treatments and they turned a corner.
Oh, yes. People even that I personally know in my own family, actually. And so I've known a lot of people who have the long C word or whatever you want to call it, and just a lot of issues with it. In fact, one of the things that doesn't have a lot of scientific data behind this one actually is that this company that makes the Hydrofix from holyhydrogen.com, and they're doing so many things with their hydrogen. One of the things that they did, and they didn't do it on purpose, they just always trying to improve everything so much, and they stumble upon things, and they found a way because it was making the machine work better in every way, but it started structuring the hydrogen. So
Ah,
and then they start double structuring with these crazy nanobubbles, and they end up creating something that they call sticky hydrogen, which is a good thing. You want it sticking to everything, getting on your organs, you know, everywhere where it's supposed to be. And there is data that does show that hydrogen appears to, protect DNA and things of this nature. And I think this has a lot to do with our DNA, this technology that you're talking about. And there's more and more data that's coming out about that. I'm pretty up to date on actually a lot of the studies that are going on. And Dr. Peter McCullough and I can't remember the other doctor's name, the guy who
Dr.
literally
There's Dr. Pierre Corey,
I'm thinking,
Robert Malone.
yep, Robert Malone's the guy that I was thinking of.
Yeah.
This kind of stuff. And so in my simple opinion, like simple answer without going into crazy detail, yes, I have seen some things and I have seen a difference. Thank goodness. But I still like the combination personally, whether I do a lot of anti-parasitic foods, um, rich in antioxidants. By the way, rich in fiber. The science that's coming out on fiber. This is going to be the next big trend, Sean. In Japan, they're showing that every single fiber from every fruit, vegetable, nut, seed, bean is different. They're not all the same. So what's going to happen is you're going to get these companies. Again, it's always some company that's going to be like, hey, look, buy our fiber supplement. Look at this new science on fiber. But it really is the food that is the magic. And that's why I create these smoothies with all these, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans. I do these crazy things. And then the science of mushrooms is coming out. That's very interesting. There's another product that I really do like. I don't show any product that I don't use and that I haven't thoroughly researched. This is another one that's really interesting.
Hmm.
And it has to do with the science of mushrooms from Japan. They're doing a specific extract from the mushroom at a specific time of its growth cycle from a specific mushroom that has super high levels of these really powerful, appears to be very medicinal properties and things of this nature. This was actually being used on animals. And it was actually, people can find my video on it, but the results they saw for cancer have been dramatic.
Hmm.
And so, and you literally have to buy it from a website that sells only pet stuff.
Really? Oh, that's funny.
But the science is pretty good on it actually, and I think more is going to come out. And the most recent data in regards to dementia and Alzheimer's, I don't know if you saw this latest thing. They literally studied people again from Japan. I've seen so many people that are centennials, people who are 100 years old or more, who don't have dementia, way sharper than Sleepy Joe or whatever. I don't know if I should go there, but anyway. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do the political thing. But ultimately, they found that there is specific compounds in mushrooms and that appear to be really beneficial for things like dementia and Alzheimer's. And they found that if you eat mushrooms 2 to 3 times a week, which me personally I do, I eat them almost every day actually. It brings down your likelihood of getting dementia and Alzheimer's dramatically. And
Yeah.
so more going to be coming out. Shout out to Paul Stamets. If you guys don't know, one of the number one mycologists in the world, the science of mushrooms is amazing. I'm totally down with the fungi.
Yeah.
Hope fungi someday.
Yeah. No, me too. Me too. Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot for the average person to wrap their head around. One, because the Flexner report really did almost irreparable damage to natural medicine. It squashed to a large extent homeopathy. It balked at Ayurveda. uh, Rockefeller funded the Flexner report, which then changed the way that we looked at science and steered it toward, petroleum-based sort of chemical medical um, medications. And now what we have is decreasing health span, especially in the West. We're sicker, we're fatter, we're more tired. And what happens is when you're sicker, fatter, and more tired, you don't have or you don't make the time to do the research. I think that you're an outlier in that respect, is that you at your sickest put your time and money and attention to find the thing that would make you better. And it's a lot of work. And you have to have
That's
energy to do that work. And if you don't have energy to do that work, to research what will help you, what will make you better, you flashed the bag of Purium, and you know, I know at least, and I don't know if we know, but I know that that is a legit company with legit products that will change your life. I've interviewed Troy Casey and Raw of Earth, and guys that are all in on it, and the origin story and how they make their products is incredible anyway. But
Yep.
we were stuck with, and I'm thinking about my friends and family who just they it's just a lot for them to take in. And
Can I
it,
keep it real for you, Sean? Not to
yeah,
interrupt you.
yeah,
So let's just say you take your average person, and I've done this. I actually did it with my own father. So you take somebody who doesn't want to change their diet, doesn't really believe in whatever, supplements or this, that, or the other. The only thing that I urged him, and I've urged others, and the results that I've seen were actually pretty dramatic. In his case, blood pressure, cholesterol, glaucoma, arthritis, and he was diabetic, but it depends on which country because their numbers a little different, but pre-diabetic, whatever. All I did was like, and he was okay with this. I was like, Dad, what if I just make clean water for you? I got him a carbon distiller. I'm like, just make water from this machine. Please just consume this water. And then I got him a hydrogen machine too. And I said, just follow my hydrogen protocol. And that was it because he was not willing to change anything. He's like, you know what? I'm not willing to change anything, blah, 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 but I'm willing to do clean water. He understood the importance of that. Show somebody a lab report. They're like, okay, I don't want this gross stuff in my body. And, he had some medical issues and stuff. And then putting the hydrogen in it, he was cool with that. And just that was so life changing for him. Absolutely life changing. So if you could just take your average person and say, look, if nothing else, just clean water. And if you really want to take it that next step, put some hydrogen in it. And that's it. That's how easy your life can be. Beyond that, I mean, if you want to eat however you want, I don't really think that's the best way. Because if you change your diet and do exercise and get your nutrients and all the right things, it's going to be just even better. All right.
mm,
Just clean water and hydrogen makes such a difference. It's literally hard to believe, but I've witnessed it. And I didn't think it would work, if I'm honest with you. I thought, with the way that he treated his body and going out all the time and eating French fries and cheeseburgers and drinking tap water at restaurants. And what's funny story is that after I got him and my mother on the carbon distilled water, and of course with the hydrogen in it, it only took about a month or two that within that amount of time, of course, they're at some restaurant because they're always going out eating that garbage food. They're drinking some of the water from them. They're like, "Well, you pretty much ruined us." And I'm like, "What do you
yeah,
mean?" They're like, "This stuff tastes horrible, and I never could taste it before." But your palate begins to change. Okay, your
right.
palate acclimated to clean water, and then that stuff just tastes horrible.
It
And
does.
they just could not drink the stuff after I got them on clean water.
Yeah,
But
I've seen that myself too with family members of mine who, and again, we haven't drank tap water at my house or in my family for about 12 years. We've taken the bottles, gathered, 20 gallons at a time, sometimes 40 gallons at a time, and taken it back. I've got an analema device, an analema wand that will, structure the water. And when you have a glass of tap water, either at home or at a restaurant, it tastes like you're drinking pool water. It's
yeah,
so the chlorine is so strong that you're like, oh, I'm drinking a jacuzzi right now, which is disgusting anyway. And then you can smell it in your shower too. Like yeah, the difference, it's so obvious once you've made that shift. And so what I'm hearing you say, and I'm going to sort of like take it a step further, is it's hard to have the energy to be use discernment to make the right choices and the stuff that you put in your body, what to take and how to sleep, all that stuff. But if you can change the water you drink, if you can drink clean water and you can put hydrogen in that water, that maybe gives you a little bit of energy, maybe gives a little bit of vitality, and then you get the energy that you can then take the next steps to make more changes because you've got a little bit more gas in the tank, you got a little bit more vitality. That's that's maybe the first step for everybody, which is a big deal.
And there's something that we didn't mention. I did forget to mention this actually, and this was literally the first thing that I ever read about hydrogen, which was how protective it appears to be for our body. I mean, we're talking dramatic, Sean. Like, let me give you an example. For example, my video number 8. My video number 8 on my channel shows cells that are being exposed to like radiation or chemotherapy or something along these lines, causing 90% cellular destruction. It's horrible. It's the reason that people get so sick on those medicines. Then they did the same exact thing to the cells, but they had hydrogen this time. And instead of 90% cellular damage, there was only 10%, which is way lower. You can walk away from 10%. Okay. It's like having a little bit of rust on your car. It's drivable versus a car that's totally cancered and rusted out and just horrible. And that you just can't even change the brakes on it anymore. And so it's a massive difference. And when I saw how protective it was kind of mind blowing to me. I mean, we are talking about even potentially, there's a lot of things that we're exposed to that I think we need protection from that could potentially make us sick. That's another reason I'm really big on hydrogen. It's part of the reason that I threw the 144K in the name of my YouTube, the Uprising 144K. The 144K is a number from ancient scripture about the 12 tribes of 12,000 in each tribe, which equals 144,000. And they
Mm,
were all, which stands for purity, actually, is one of the things that it stands for. It also stands for light, light, white, all the colors and everything else. But the reason that, in my opinion, it's so important is if you look at hydrogen, hydrogen appears to be the purest substance known to man. I mean, that's pretty wild right there. I also call it the ascension molecule because it literally ascends. If you separate hydrogen and oxygen, like in water, what does oxygen do? It drops to the ground like a dead person, okay? Oxygen is oxidizing. I know that we need it, but only in good balance and only a certain amount of it. Hydrogen's that next level molecule. And one of the things it does, I think there's two things that it does that I think will blow your mind. At least it blows my mind. I get really excited about this stuff. And one of them is how much it protects us. There's a drug. There's a drug that is called cisplatin. Okay, it's an anti-tumor drug from the pharmaceutical field. Doctors rarely use it because it is so bad for you that it will literally destroy your kidneys. And let's just say it even happens to work on the tumor they're trying to apply this on. Destroys your kidneys. Now you need a kidney transplant, right? It's a horrible drug in a lot of ways. There was a study where they used hydrogen with it, and it protected the kidneys so much that it looks like you could potentially walk out with your original kidneys while using something that is so toxic. Now imagine that if it protects you from something like that. What about all the other stuff in our environment that we're being exposed to if we're trying to stay healthy? So I have a vision that this thing is really protecting my body in so many ways, and I'm minimizing all my chemicals and pesticides, and so I'm trying to minimize as much as I can, make my body as strong as I can, and have the hydrogen with me. But to also showcase this beautiful molecule, which I actually think is very spiritual. But that's a whole other conversation, really. But the true molecule of life. Remember, we said that life is in the blood, right? Cut off blood supply, you're going to have problems. Okay, you're probably going to die. So let's say you have a stroke. This is actually one of the things that it's medically approved for in Japan. This is so wild. Let's say you have a stroke and you're not getting proper blood supply to a part of your brain. Now, we all know that when someone has a stroke, a lot of times half their body doesn't work, right? Your face droops and you can't walk and all these things happen to you. So what happens if you don't restore blood supply to this part of the brain relatively quickly? You know what happens, right? That part of the brain will literally start to die. All right. And then you're going to have major problems. So in certain ambulances in Japan, they literally have hydrogen tanks. And so they'll emit, just like me right now, I'm inhaling hydrogen gas, pure hydrogen, molecular hydrogen gas, really high purity, right? And they put you on this immediately. Why? Here's where things get crazy, Sean. This will literally go straight to my brain. So it'll go straight to somebody's brain. It appears to go to the area that is not getting proper blood supply and keep it alive without any blood. Now think about that. How is it alive without blood? I mean, it is so mind-boggling, but that tells you this is the true molecule of life. This is the source of life. And then you wonder, well, how does this thing work? Why does it bring more life and health to my body? Well, gee, I wonder why, right? But then you get to the hospital, they restore blood supply to that part of the brain, and the success rate as far as people making full recoveries is like 99.8, 99.9% of the time. It's almost every single time people make full recoveries when they go through this in Japan. So it's a big deal. And of course, it's also medically approved for heart attacks. I mean, my own heart condition, you should have seen my cardiologist's face because I had this condition for decades. And of course, I knew that I had it. I was walking around like this thinking that it would, yeah, I thought it'd kill me someday, whatever. That's the way I was living my life. Once I had good insurance, I was like, maybe I should get it looked at. They did a bunch of studies on me and stress tests and, imaging and everything else. And they're like, dude, they didn't say dude, but, they basically were letting me know that you're going to die from this if you don't do something about this. And you'd be lucky to have 10 years. This thing is exhausting your heart. And so at the time, I was still like figuring out the hydrogen thing and trying different ways, even different machines, different modalities. When I finally found the Hydrofix from the Holy Hydrogen Company, because the machine checked all the boxes and everything looked so good, I'm like, I'm going to try this. And I've been playing around with protocols too. But the one thing that I never was able to achieve with hydrogen this heart condition never went away. And I never thought that it would fix it, to be quite honest with you. There was something majorly wrong with my heart. I think I needed something to physically change, like a surgery. Sure enough, though, the hydrogen, I go to my cardiologist, we're getting close to scheduling something for surgery. And all of a sudden, I show no heart condition. All of a sudden, everything's working great. And he just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this can't be right. He goes, dude, your heart is like working perfectly all of a sudden. I don't know what to tell you. And
Whoa.
then I've met other people who had very similar, if not the same condition that I had, and they did my protocol and their heart conditions went away. So this was something that I repeated and with other people. So, I mean, hydrogen is just such an amazing, beautiful, beautiful thing, which is why it bugs me so much when people do it the wrong way
Yeah.
and they just sell, I don't know, some pill or something. It's just
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can tell. And I think everyone who's listening or watching right now understands that you're coming from a good place and that you care. And when there are people, fakers, manufacturers that are doing it incorrectly or insufficiently or even deleteriously that are hurting people, it's okay to care. It's okay to care about doing it the right way. We're yeah.
Well, I'll just say that really think about it. I'm so sorry. This is interrupting. Someone's trying to call while I'm talking to you. The thing is that it would weigh on my soul. See,
Mm,
I mean, very short. Okay, we're lucky if we make it 100 years. Let's just be honest. We're all going to be dying very soon. I hate to say that, but in the grand scheme of things, we don't live very long. The last thing I want to do, I really believe very strongly in love your neighbor as yourself. I really, you know, treat others how you want to be treated, like this type of thing. I really believe in that very wholeheartedly. And if I do something really bad, it like eats away at me like you don't even know. It just feels absolutely horrible. And when I rather bring the truth. I rather see people be healthy and happy, and it's nurturing my soul just as much as hydrogen even nurtures my body. And so I just think it's better to be that way, and that's why I choose to do that. There's no way I'm gonna. Eternity is a very long time, my friend. I don't want
well,
to.
and by doing that, you become a target. Over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, I've spoken out actively against the narrative. My kids have never received an injection of any kind ever. They're 10 and 8. They've never gotten a shot. That's how long I've been paying attention, reading, learning so that I can protect the health of myself and my family, right? That
Awesome.
that's how committed I am. So when the last 4 years sort of came to be, and I'm like, hey, listen, I've been paying close attention to this. I think that you got to be careful. I think you need to kind of ask like a lot of questions before you do something that you're going to regret.
Yeah.
I lost friends. I didn't get invited to Thanksgiving, and some of those people are coming around and some of them are not, but that's just the way that it goes. And when you feel strongly and when you speak the truth, you take some arrows, and you're obviously suited for it. I'm obviously suited for it, you know, and I sleep really well at night. Sleep really well, you know. Uh
Yeah.
a couple more questions, and this has really just been such a fascinating. I almost want to do like a part two where we can go more into the esoteric because obviously there's a lot you're not saying um about how it's affected you consciously and spiritually. So maybe we'll talk about doing a part two. Oh yeah, of course, of course.
Hidden messages in water. And I have more to this. I mean, and who really came up with this? Who discovered it? Do you remember?
Before Masaru Emoto.
Well, no, I mean, that was the guy, Masaru
Yeah,
Emoto. And the Japanese. What is it with the Japanese? They're just so incredible. What is it?
yeah, yeah,
Amazing human beings. I love those people. They're just awesome. I love the
yeah,
Japanese. Beautiful, beautiful culture. I mean, and look, we all have our, people could try to nitpick bad stuff about them. Nobody's perfect, but I'm always so impressed with the things that they're finding from
yeah,
not hydrogen, to water technologies, whatever.
yeah. A couple more questions here before we
Yeah.
take it home. What about kids and pets?
Okay, so that's actually a really good question because this one bugs me too. Because there's a lot of quote unquote companies which shall remain nameless, where they tell you, yeah, sure, give it to your kids or give it to your pets. If you're going to give it to your kids, in my opinion, super, 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 super important that it's of the highest purity, even more than the average person. Why? Well, look. I'll just show you some data here a little bit. So remember I was talking to you about the lab report, and I mean, like pages of chemicals, by the way, in our water. Um, who does it affect the most? Contaminants in our water affect little babies and little kids the most. Why? And by the way, radioactive contaminants in our water, I didn't even know that till I saw the lab report. I learned just about everything about water. And basically, when you're a child, your liver's not fully developed, kidneys are not fully developed, your body's not fully developed, your brain's not fully developed. And so it appears to pose more of a risk for, children and animals, depending. And ultimately, if you make hydrogen correctly and of the highest purity, then in my opinion, it's actually really good for them. In fact, I just recently got another testimonial. I've had quite a few. This guy developed a special mask for his dog, so you can breathe in the hydrogen from the Hydrofix, the machine that I use. And he sent me the images. I'm going to be putting up this video here up in the near future. But the dog had some pretty severe health issues, and the results were like absolutely dramatic. And that's why he had messaged me. And the same thing goes for children. There was a wonderful testimonial of another woman, and I've had quite a few, but this one was the most amazing because she had 2 kids without hydrogen. She got pregnant again, found my videos, went and makes the cleanest water in the world, the carbon distillation. And then she got the hydrogen fix from Holy Hydrogen and started doing the hydrogen water protocol. And her pregnancy, she always had the same issue with her pregnancies. This pregnancy, none of those issues that she always had. Everything went through like perfect. And the baby, she said, and normally the oldest baby is typically the strongest and the best because you were younger when you had your oldest baby and younger eggs and whatever. Well, she said her youngest child is by far the best out of all her kids. It seems super healthy, super happy, very at peace, doesn't whine and cry so much like other babies. And even the doctor made a comment to her about her baby, saying that he'd never seen a baby like this. Like he was so impressed. He's like, man, what is it with your baby? It's incredible. And it's a true hydrogen baby. And so and in my opinion, for animals and children, I think it actually could be of an extremely good benefit, in my opinion.
Excellent. Excellent. We've talked about, and this is a question that I ask a lot of guests, which is, and we already know that you've got haters, but what do the haters say specifically?
Well, I mean, and they threaten. One of them really. I mean, there's a reason that I don't even like to put out my real full name out there because they literally have this. They've went and gone as far as trying to figure out where I live, finding out family members, being very, very threatening. Then I found out it's a lot of stuff has come out, but it's quite horrible because basically I discovered the secret of their equipment or whatever they're doing to produce hydrogen. Like I said, I won't give the name of a device, but in my opinion, any device that uses lye or sodium hydroxide or stainless steel as metal, I mean, that's not, or anything like some of these companies try to really say like, oh, we have something better than hydrogen. And now this is laughable to me. We have over 2,000 studies showing how amazing hydrogen is, molecular hydrogen. And now somebody wants to come along that has virtually no data and say, no, ours is superior, right? And they make what they call Brown's gas, and it's not what they tell you actually. It's not just a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen. There are other gases that are being produced, and they never talk about it. They don't even know what they are actually. That's how bad it is. And they'll be like, oh, it's so amazing because now you have oxygen and hydrogen. It's really much better. And I'm thinking, no, this is not the way. This is not the data. This is not the way you want to go about it. And you don't need to supplement that oxygen. We're already getting oxygen in our environment. A lot of the times, it's actually how to make your body more efficient to the oxygen that you're already getting. And you can even do breathing techniques, as you brought up, to oxygenate your body because there's already oxygen in the environment, So you don't really need to be supplemented constantly with hydrogen, in my opinion. And so, yeah, you want the pure hydrogen. And then just companies like, I mean, we talked about it off camera a little bit, but it really comes down, in my opinion, to money. That's really what it comes down to. They don't like me.
Always.
It comes down to, that's pretty much it. And so they just hate that, and they'll try to throw, lawyers at me, and then I have to go and get a lawyer, and then the lawyer's like, hey, you got to do this or do that. And I hate that because, in my opinion, that inhibits progress. Like, let's just try to move forward. Let's try to find the best ways instead of trying to fight with me so you can continue to sell your potential garbage product or whatever. It's like, just why are you attacking me? You know, I'm trying to do things the right way, and you just care about making your money and your narrative. It's so frustrating, actually. I
Yeah.
rather work together with people and do good things, and you got to do right by yourself, and you got to do right by others. That's just my opinion. And
Yeah.
and look, if your goal is to make money, which clearly a lot of these companies, their goal is to make money, hey, that's fine. But why not make money and bring something that's good to people? You know, why is that so hard? Like,
Yeah, and if it's good enough, it'll hold up, right? If it's good enough, show the work, explain it, tell the case. It's merit. It's based on merit. It has to be, and the cream rises to the top.
yeah.
Um, well,
So
again,
it sucks.
I, well, again, just to reiterate the fact, when you speak the truth, when you believe in what you do, when you're actually helping people, that gets in the way of some people's plan, and you're gonna get some negative feedback. I don't care who you are.
Or when they
Um,
offer you and you turned them down, boy, they don't like that one. There was a really, I
uh,
mean, offered me a lot. And I went as far as testing their product, even though I thought it wouldn't work. I turned them down so many times, but they just kept being pushy. And so finally, I was like, okay. They kept saying that they were better than the Hydrofix that I'm using, and I'm like, it's pretty hard to believe. But hey, if you think you really got something better and you're trying to be that persuasive, okay, I'll try it. It turned out that the machine was probably one of the worst machines in the entire hydrogen market. It made me sick. Actually, it was a horrible, horrible machine, and it's a total piece of trash. Um, Actually made in China too, and not the highest quality of Chinese stuff. It was actually some of the worst stuff they've ever made. And so, of course, once I really figured out what this guy was doing with the equipment, because he was actually modifying a welding device, it was horrible. I mean, it's a horrible, horrible thing. And and once I found out what was going on, I told him that I was going to do an honest review, and boy, he did not like my honest review. Gentle and kind. And of course, he really, really went after me, and he's said a lot of lies too. And I don't like to argue with people, so I just kind of I'm like, let it be on your soul, man. If you're doing this to people, and by the way, it's like one of the most popular machines out there. That's the dangerous part. It's like literally huge because the machine costs almost nothing to make. It's really cheap technology, and they charge just a massive amount of money for it, and then they offer people a lot of money to promote it. So it just gets everywhere because everybody goes for the money, and he tried to do that with me, and no, I never took a dime from him, and I would never support that product. I only support what I personally use. So that's the way that I have to go about it, and
yeah,
that's all. I don't promote a million products either, not even 100, not even 50. I use very few things. I discovered that you don't need a lot to really get your health right.
yeah,
Again, super clean water, mypurewater.com. Best hydrogen machine, holyhydrogen.com. You know the Purium product already. Power Shake is the one that I use. And then I have a few. These are not really supplements. These are different things depending on. I told you the mushroom extract. I like the Leotrel B17. Have you ever heard of this stuff?
no,
This was really interesting. The website, let's see, it's called rncstore.com. Again, discount code uprising 144K, but and it lab tested. This actually used to be an anti-cancer drug.
hmm.
A long time ago took off the shelf. Wonder why, but you can read about it. It's called Leotrel B17. I believe they also have to market it to pets. This stuff was for animals and dogs. But I read the scientific research on that. It's pretty interesting, actually. And so yeah, I only share certain things, and we know from the little magical needle that went into a lot of people's arms throughout the world, and the huge uptick in cancers. And we know what it appears that this stuff is potentially doing to people's immune systems and everything else. And so cancer is, and I've seen so many cancer cases lately, and I do have a cancer protocol, and I mean, it's a tough thing to beat. I'm not gonna lie to you. Cancer is a really tough one, and you need to throw everything you can at it. But I have seen people. There's a guy I actually know who had it up in. He's actually from Canada, and he did my full protocol, and he never had to do treatment. He did walk away. He's still alive. There was a lady, in fact, this lady is a really interesting story. She was actually deemed terminal. Was told that she had about 3 months to live. Horrible breast cancer, spread all over the place. Told her that there was pretty much nothing she could do. Here's where the magic happens. I even had a oncologist contact me. I have a lot of doctors who reached out to me, want to learn my techniques because they've seen what happens with their patients, and they're like, "How are you doing this?" And they always say, "Oh, there's this guy on YouTube." But anyway, it's pretty funny stories. But basically, she used hydrogen, the lady with the breast cancer, And the doctors offered her chemotherapy, and she's like, well, I got nothing to lose, I'm dying anyway. And the thing is that when you use hydrogen with chemotherapy, and they've already seen this a lot in Japan, the results just dramatically change for whatever reason. Like, let's say, these are random numbers, but let's say a doctor tells you, hey, you need 10 treatments of chemotherapy, right, for your particular condition. With the hydrogen, this is what I personally have seen more than once. You end up getting half the treatments, like 5, and all of a sudden the cancer is gone. And the doctors are like, whoa, we've never seen cancer respond like this before, which is a good thing because you're getting half the exposure to the toxic stuff they give you and the protection that hydrogen appears to offer. So, anyway, this woman supposedly had an untreatable cancer, and she was, after 3 months, she was still alive. And now it's been like 7 or 8 years. So she's
Wow.
for quite a
Well,
while.
let me ask a question about that. If
Yeah.
if it's protective to tissues and sinews and bones and whatever, wouldn't it also be protective to the cancer cells?
No, because, okay, so remember, the cancer cells are basically your cells,
Yeah.
and ultimately cancer is a mutation. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very different than when you're dealing with like something like, let's say, a virus or something. And so ultimately, hydrogen seems to, again, it seems to bring balance into the body.
Yeah.
And cancer really seems to confuse the body because it's literally taking in energy like sugar, for example, right? We know cancer loves sugar. And instead of utilizing it to produce ATP, to produce energy for the body, it uses up almost all the energy to replicate and just spread. And then you're like, people with cancer are so bogged down and so tired. And obviously, I've seen hydrogen. I mean, one of the very first studies on hydrogen was actually about the mitochondria and how amazing it is for the mitochondria. So, hydrogen is just so crazy
Mm.
amazing, but it's the only amazing thing. I mean, I need all sorts of things for my body. Like I said, no nutritional deficiencies. I mean, there's a lot of different things that I'm talking about, from minerals to vitamins. I'm a big proponent of vitamin D. Vitamin D is so important. I actually learned a lot from the #1 doctor in the world that researches vitamin D. He literally runs an entire hospital, numerous experiments. Here's a little tidbit that's so amazing. If you have anything traumatic happen to your body, within 50 seconds, your body gets depleted of half of its vitamin D in 50 seconds.
Whoa.
And that's something that this doctor learned. And so I just learned from everywhere. And I learned how to apply these things for my life. And even the absorption of nutrients, I get blood work regularly, especially with the diet that I've created for myself, which came out of an ancient book mixed with science. Again, I looked at many places to create my protocol. I don't like to talk about diet a ton, but doctor, the last blood work I got, normally in the medical field, knowing it well because I worked in it, they normally don't call you when everything looks great. You usually only get a phone when things are bad. And I got a phone call from this doctor, and I got really worried. She's like, I'm calling about your blood work. And I was like, oh my God, like, what is it? Just tell me, what is it? And I couldn't believe that anything would happen to me because of the way that I treat myself. And I'm so good to myself these days. But she's like, no, I just want to talk to you about your blood work. I'm like, yeah, what is it? And she said, well, I've been doing this for a lot of decades. And she said, I've never seen blood work like yours ever. And I'm like, okay, that's what you're calling to tell me, that my blood work looks great? She goes, well, actually, I really want to know what you're doing, because not only would I like to apply it to my patients, because I can't seem to achieve the goals that you are. Whatever it is you're doing to your blood, I just can't believe it. And I also, and I've had doctors do this before, and she did it for the same reason. I also have a family member, it's actually her daughter. And it always comes down to their own personal family when they start looking outside of Western medicine, if they're seeing somebody achieving certain things, which throughout the years, there's been quite a few doctors who have seen the things that I've been able to achieve. I got funny stories. I've posted some of them. I had another one about a type 1 diabetic. I mean, the doctor thinks I should win a Nobel Prize. It was hilarious because of what I was achieving with this patient. And he's like, how are you doing this? And so, anyway, once she found out, it was so hilarious. She's like, well, what are you doing? And she really thought that I was just taking some pill and that was it, right? And I didn't want to explain myself because I knew what would happen, but she kept pushing. And finally, I was like, look, this is what I do. And I said, I clean my water, I make the hydrogen, I make these smoothies. And all of a sudden, she's like, oh, it takes work, doesn't it? Like, it was too much work for her all of a sudden to your life. She's like, I can't tell all my patients to do this. She was just kind of disappointed. And then when she said, well, how do you eat? And we started talking a little bit about diet, that's when things just went off a cliff, because she goes, I cannot believe. She goes, are you serious right now? That, like, literally, like, I haven't eaten meat for over a decade, right? And she's like, this can't be possible. There's just no way that you're eating the way that you're telling me. and that you have no nutritional deficiencies and your blood looks like this, she just couldn't wrap it around her mind because it made no sense with the narrative that she's been taught.
Right.
And so absolutely blew her mind, but it did confirm that a lot of my theories that I put into action really are working. And I've had numerous blood tests to prove it. So anyway, it's been pretty interesting and fascinating. It's been an interesting ride. And all I hope, because I hate that I have suffered so much throughout my life, but all I hope is that my suffering hopefully brings good things to others. That means a whole lot to me because one day I know that when I meet my maker, you know, I can feel good about what I did in my life. And so that is super, super, super important to me.
You're here. You're here. Well, this has been such a fascinating conversation. I had high hopes for today and they were surpassed. This was phenomenal. I learned a whole bunch. I know that everyone listening and watching and did too. I Two more things. One, I want you to give us all the links where people can find you first, and then I'll ask the fill in the blank question that I ask of every single one of my guests. So hit us again with the websites.
All right. So the first thing is if you want to find, well, the best hydrogen machine is holyhydrogen.com. The best water is mypurewater.com. Discount code if you guys want to support what I'm doing, uprising144K. iShopPurium.com. Again, discount code uprising144K. RNCstore.com. Again, same discount code uprising144K. This is the toughest one, the one about the mushroom thing that they saw really crazy things for cancer. You'd have to go find my video on that one because there's a special link. I think it was like hman dot. I can't remember, to be quite honest with you. And so that one's a tough one. If people want to find my YouTube channel, just type in uprising144K. You'll find my YouTube channel. If you want to support it too, it's free. You know, just subscribe, give the videos thumbs up, share the videos with people who you think could find benefit of them. Everything is free on that front. So that's pretty awesome. You can find me on Twitter, otherwise known as X. I don't do a ton of stuff on there, but it's good to connect with me there just in case my channel ever gets shut down and have to redirect it somewhere else. Instagram, I'm on there. I'm either there as Hydrogen Man or Uprising144K. I forget. I'm not a big internet guy. I suck at technology, actually. So it's amazing that I'm even doing all that. And then on top of it all, if people, I mean, I don't want people to specifically come to me, but if somebody really needs me, it's hard for me to say no. I know what it's like to suffer. So if people want to email me, they can contact me at uprising144k@gmail.com. Always include your name and phone number. I literally try to call people back. And then if people really want to do like a full consult, we can probably arrange that. It's not my favorite thing to do, but again, it's hard for me when people are suffering and they truly need help. So I'm always there to help people. And so you can find me like that. And I think that's all of it. I
That's
don't, if I've,
good.
I'm sure I missed something, but
Strong. Lot of good stuff. Okay, so the final question is a fill in the blank, and this can be based on really anything. It can be specific to hydrogen or not, and you can elaborate as much or as little as you wish, but please fill in the blank.
okay.
Everyone would benefit from knowing.
What clean water and clean hydrogen can do for your health.
If you don't know that by now, then you weren't listening. You weren't listening. Greg, this has been such a pleasure. I really do want to do a part two where we can go out on a limb and get into the woo a little bit. So thank you so much for joining me today on the Optimal Performance Podcast.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And I had a lot of fun too, Sean. I really hope people got a lot out of this or something out of it, something positive.